The history of man can never be complete without the mention of Egypt and Mesopotamia. These countries and regions played a huge part in shaping the world into what it is today. With advancements in medicine, agriculture, and science since the Bronze Age, we sometimes wonder what it was like in the past. But while ancient history is so different from what we have today, it is best to know the histories of some of the best and worst drugs we know today. Join us to learn about the past and what drugs were like in ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia. Relics of ancient history. Religion, pottery, and agriculture have existed for as long as humanity can remember. Yet they are not the only things that have been passed down to the modern man through time. Records from the ancient world show that alcohol and narcotics are some of the fragments of history that made it to the present times. With the history of alcohol dating back to 7000 BC, one can only assume what else has survived that long. Beyond the use of beer and wine in ancient Egypt, drugs or intoxicants were equally as common as they are today. Similar to what they do today, these drugs induced hallucinations, but were also very useful in ancient health practices and even religious rituals. All this brings us to the obvious question. What were these drugs? What did they look like? And where are they today? Opium. One of the most dangerous forms of narcotics we know today is no stranger to human history. As one of the most dangerous narcotics to ever exist, opium is still a marvel to science today. Also known as poppy tears, opium is derived from an immature poppy fruit, used in ancient times to treat pain. Poppy has come a long way from its use back then. The use of opium, or its mother plant, poppy, goes as far back as 3500 BC. It was cultivated in Lower Mesopotamia and was referred to as the joy plant by Sumerians. The Sumerians passed their knowledge of this plant to the Assyrians, who transferred it to the Egyptians. To the ancient civilization, poppy was a powerful pain reliever. On the downside, it was heavily addictive. It was used in moderation to prevent the user from being addicted. Yet despite the careful measures, most people ended up being dependent on them. The poppy plant, when ripe, was harvested and stored for use. The seeds were soaked in water for hours, drained and then ground with water and a sweetener to make milk of the poppy. This juice was then used to relieve the pain of seriously wounded people by putting them to sleep. Opium, which is a product of the poppy plant, was a different story altogether. Evidence from ancient history showed that it was consumed in different ways. It was either smoked, eaten plainly, or eaten in mixtures. Besides the medicinal use of treating pain, opium was also used to put people painlessly to death when mixed with hemlock. Similarly, it was used in rituals as seen from the earliest findings in these areas. Although opium had been known to the Sumerians long before the Egyptians, it was the Egyptians who encouraged its spread. By farming poppy in 1300 BC, Egyptians traded these plants to Greece, Carthage, and Europe. Over time, regions in China, Britain, and Asia became part of the opium trade. Like most Egyptian myths, the poppy plant was linked to an Egyptian god. Thoth, the god of wisdom, was credited for the invention of opium. While poppy was farmed intentionally, the use of opium was left to priests, healers, and magicians. To harvest opium from poppy, the poppy fruit will be scratched. The latex that comes out is allowed to dry before it is collected. With raw opium, the possibilities were endless. Till today, opium has retained its relevance in medicine. Over the years, there have been several derivatives of opium. Morphine, which was the earliest derivative, was very useful in the First and Second World Wars. Other derivatives collectively known as opioids include codeine, heroin, and oxycodone. Despite the different names, all opioids have the same effect on the body in varying degrees. In the past and present, they were used therapeutically to treat pain and cause excitement. Yet they are deadly as they are beneficial because they can cause death when used in excess. Alcohol. On record, alcohol remains the oldest and most accepted form of drug. The origin of alcohol is so lost to time that it cannot be pinned to an exact date and period. The residue of a 13,000-year-old beer in modern-day Israel by scientists shows just how long humans have enjoyed the taste and effects of this drug. Dating back to 7000 BC, Traces of fermented beverage were discovered in an archaeological jar after chemical analysis in China. In Iran, traces of an alcoholic beverage dating back to 5400 BC was found. Ancient texts from Sumeria and ancient Egypt also mentioned the use of alcohol for medicinal purposes. The positions of these discoveries and their significance also showed that they were used for various purposes. There have even been speculations that it was the desire for more alcohol that led to the cultivation of agriculture. The only difference between alcohol in ancient times and alcohol in present times is the production process. Back in history, alcohol was produced through fermentation. Like all foods that contain sugar, fermentation occurs when it is exposed to air for a period of time. The exposure to air causes yeast and other bacteria in the air to act on the food and convert it to alcohol. While the history and production of alcohol differ in history, they all have one thing in common. Alcohol was used for celebrations, rituals, and several social activities. Over the years, different variations of alcohol were noticed. Each type of alcohol had the power to send someone into a different state of consciousness. As such, actions were synonymous with spirituality. It is no wonder how alcohol became attributed to religion. Cannabis. As one of the most widely recognized recreational drugs, cannabis has many names, often referred to as marijuana, pot, bush, and even 420. This plant has a long history with humans. So while it is majorly known for stimulating the feeling of euphoria, it has other benefits. The history of cannabis goes as far back as the Neolithic period. It was one of the earliest plants to be cultivated by the Japanese and Chinese regions of Asia. But before it was known as a psychoactive drug, it was valued for its fiber and as a food source. Somewhere along the line in history, cannabis was introduced to the ancient Assyrians, Mesopotamia, and Egypt. Each of these countries had their own method of use for this plant. In countries such as the Thracians and Dacians, the shaman would burn flowers of the cannabis plants to induce a trance. Other countries were also reported to burn the cannabis plant and smoke it for pleasure. All these were some of the pleasurable benefits. In most places, they were used in clothing, medicine, and religion. But how did a plant so versatile in its use become so controversial? In all its forms and variations, cannabis is dangerous, and when abused, it can have disastrous effects. However, it is safe to say that the use of cannabis was one of three: spiritual, monetary, and medicinal. In ancient texts, paintings, and records, Mesopotamians used cannabis judiciously in their day-to-day life. Hemp, a variant of cannabis, was used to make clothing and robes. Marijuana, another variant of cannabis, was medicinal. It was reported to have been used as a painkiller for people with different diseases. Due to its presence in graves and burial sites, it may have also been used in ancient funeral practices. The multiple benefits of cannabis make it highly profitable to trade. From ancient times till the present, several countries had one thing in common: trading cannabis to consumers. Because of its use in several forms, the plant itself has come under scrutiny. All over the world, it has caused mayhem and destruction in the lives of young people. This has led to it being branded as a dangerous narcotic. Sadly, what was once valued for its benefits is seen as nothing more than a stimulant. Tobacco. It may be hard to believe, but smoking has been part of human activity for centuries. Ancient Egyptians